So all we do is come down here and under camera, you see this record live option, and it will open up this menu here. So you have the option to record basic, record walking, or record fly mode. So if we click on record basic, this allows us to record our regular movements using control middle mouse to do a precise zoom or regular clunky zoom scrolling in and out like that, shift middle mouse to pan, or just middle mouse to rotate. And you can see that all getting recorded there in the timeline. When we're done, we just click the pause button and go back. And so now if we press play, we'll see our camera has been animated, and we'll see the animation is exactly however we were, just controlling the view. We can also see here in the 3D view the actual movements that we made play back, which is interesting. So I'll press pause. You'll notice down here that this does generate a bunch of keyframes, but we can actually weed these out, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So if you decide that you want to record over this in a different mode, so say you want to use walking mode or fly mode, what you would first want to do is select all these camera keyframes and press X to delete those. Notice too that when we activate any of these modes that automatic keyframing is activated, so keep that in mind. If you don't want that on later, you'll need to shut that off. But then we could press back, so if we wanted to do walk mode, we could come down here to camera, record live, and press record walking. But before we do that this time, let's go ahead and press our tilde key over the camera area here so we can go into full screen mode. And under lights, I'm going to go ahead and turn on ambient occlusion. So if we want to record walking mode, all we do is come down here to camera, under record live, and click record walking, and we're immediately transported into record walking mode. So however we, move around like this, or look up, look down, or say I wanted to teleport to there, I could focus in on that, click on that. Keep in mind though that this recording will only last the length of time that you have the animation set to. So I only have it set to about 20 seconds. So I'm going to click, it's already started over. So I want to hit pause here and press my tilde key to exit that screen. And so I only had the animation set to about 600 frames long, which is 30 frames per second. So it's about, you can see on my timeline here, it's only 20 seconds long. So if you plan on recording one of these modes, it's better to set the end length of your animation to much longer. That way you have all the time you want to basically capture the footage you need before the animation resets over and starts copying over those frames, which we don't want. But if we were to press back now and press play, we can see down here in our camera view the a recording of the walk mode that we just did, and then where I zoom in on that kind of post type thing there and looking around there. So by default, your movements when you're in walk mode or using basic mode might be a bit jittery, and also this generates a ton of keyframes, but there's a simple way to clear this out. All we do is press pause, go back, and with all these camera keyframes selected, press T in our tool shelf, and under the animation tab, we can use our chain select option to kind of thin these out. So what we would want to do is set this chain select to a value like 4, which is what it's on by default, which would be fine. Now if we press chain select, you can't hardly see it because these keyframes are so close together, but if we zoom in real close, you'll see that only a keyframe is selected every 4 keyframes. So if we wanted to get rid of everything in between those, we could press invert selection and then press delete. So now we only have a keyframe of what we had once every 4 keyframes. So the animation is much less jittery and we have much less keyframe information, so it's easier to manage too. But you could set that to any value and adjust these however you want to thin them out. We could also press pause, go back. We could press A to select all of these, and we could, make this much longer or much faster by scaling these. So we press A to select all these keyframes. And you want to make sure that you just have the camera selected. And if you have other things animated in your scene, you may need to turn on this option here, which will only display the selected objects keyframes. So the plane was selected, which has no keyframes, but if we click back on the camera, this is how we can narrow in on only one object's keyframes if you happen to have a bunch of other stuff animated. So we could increase or decrease this time. I could press S to scale, then press 2, which will multiply the length of this animation times 2. However, our animation is only set to be 600 frames long, so we would need to change that to 12 100 frames to even be able to get down to where we've scaled this animation out. Now if we press play here, which of course the play button here is just convenience controls. It does the same thing as your regular animation play button. But we've got a much slower, kind of softer animation of this walk mode going now. Go ahead and press pause and go back here and move this back to the 0 line here. And I'm going to go ahead and press X to delete all those keyframes so we can do a demonstration of recording fly mode. But before we do that, let's go ahead and set the end length of our animation to something really, really high so that we're able to fly around in fly mode for as long as we want, and then decide how we're going to cut it later. And this will prevent the timeline from looping back over what we already recorded once we get going. So let's change this from 1200 to say something absurd like 10,000, because we're going to just adjust this later. Anyways, we just don't want to be interrupted while we're recording the actual footage. So we'll increase that to 10,000, and we can come down here in our camera view, press our tilde key to maximize our screen view, or Control Up will also work. And then under Camera, under Record Live, we just want to select Record Fly Mode, and we are now instantly in this mode here. So Record Fly Mode is, it's kind of like you're in a hovercraft, and there's kind of like a lag as the direction follows the mouse, and then you can also move forward by increasing, by scrolling up, and you can slow down by scrolling back, or reverse even by scrolling back. So recording fly mode is actually a really ideal way to record, because this gives us some really smooth but really tight precision, depending on the artistic style of whatever you're animating, or whatever you need to record or work here. But in general, this can give us some really smooth angles and some really interesting camera views for some tighter control down the road. We'll go ahead and stop there by clicking and then press pause, which finishes the record mode. I'll press my tilde key to exit full screen mode. And now if we press back and press play, we can watch the camera down here follow all these exact keyframes. And you can see I kind of slow down there because I'm doing a lot of explaining things rather than filming, but we can also see the camera moving down here in the live 3D view, which is pretty cool to watch our actions we made play out. Once again, if we want, we could pause, go back. We can thin out these animation keyframes if we wanted by doing a chain select. So we could do something, much longer if we wanted. So we could, maybe do this by increase these to 8, press chain select. And there's quite a few more keyframes this time, so it takes a little bit longer to select them all. Then we could press invert selection to select every keyframe between every 8th frame and press delete. And now if we press play, we have a much smoother animation down here in the camera, in addition to having less keyframes if we plan on doing something to them later.